Welcome back to 90 Seconds Plus with Invercargill City Mayor Nobby Clark. Now, wastewater, or Bluff wastewater, is still a hot topic after Tuesday's meeting, and I think it would be good for me, Nobby, to explain to our listeners or our followers that we need it. It's very confusing, the different options. There's the 1F and there's the 1G and the 1A, and they all come with most of them come with quite a bit of cost to the ratepayers, which will then set a precedent down this has been approved for down at Bluff. Then there's the Clifton. So can you walk us through? So let's start with 1A, that's as it is now, and then we can go through the others and how it went.
Okay, so both for Bluff and subsequently for Clifton at a later stage, there are basically three options. One is that you do the status quo, which is 1A or 1B. Mm-hmm. So that means that you just treat the water, the wastewater, which includes sewage, but it also includes grey water and storm water. We treat it and we put it through ultraviolet light, which kills off most of the nasties that are in the water. Not 100%, but it's something like 99.997. So it's only a fraction less into it. The other options that we face are twofold, and they're driven primarily by Iwi. So one is that Iwi are now saying that they believe that any discharge that goes to a river or to an ocean needs to go to land first. So they refer to it as going to Mother Earth, that it returns to Mother Earth before it's pumped out. So that opens up some options. And then the third option that was being promoted was that it didn't go to water. So it wouldn't go into a river and it wouldn't go into the ocean. It would go to land. Now those land costs have been put aside because they are tens of millions of dollars, astronomical amounts. So one of the options that we faced in Bluff was the suggestion by Iwi initially that the wastewater would be pumped to Clifton, which is our big plant in town. That's about, by my assessment, about $20 million worth of piping. So we've got down to basically three levels. One is 1A, which some councillors support, which comes at a little bit of cost, but not much.
And that's just so for people understand, that's how we've been doing it for the last 20, 30 years. That's where it goes out the pipe, goes through the treatment process, down out the pipe and out into the ocean. And so gone.
We've had a consent for 25 years for that. Iwi have raised no issues with the Environment Southland, which is the regulator, or with us, or with the Ministry of Health, or with MPI, which is around fisheries and stuff. So it's only in the last couple of years, under the Labor government, that the tribes across the country got excited about their abilities around fresh water. And so they were opposed right across the country and told us we'd all have to go to land. The current coalition government is opposed to that. They've said it runs up to something like $40 or $50 billion to do the whole country to land. And we just can't afford that. It will double our rates.
It doesn't make any sense if the water's 99.9% good, we're back to normal. It's like, well, what are we doing? This is just to feel good?
So the issue that we then faced to, I guess, make Iwi comfortable, which we have to do, was either 1F and 1G. So I'll explain those in a minute. But the other thing is that what are the things that are driving our responsibilities to Iwi? And putting aside the treaty, which has nothing about this, as far as I'm concerned, there are three documents. There is a national standard on coastal. There is the local coastal plan, which is run by, governed by Environment Southland. And then there is the founding document for TAMI. So TAMI is Te Marama. So they're a group based here in Invercargill that give us advice on cultural issues. All three of those documents say two things, but they don't say the third thing. So they say that we must consult with Iwi. Consult means exactly that. You listen to their views.
That's right. It's like you're taking in other people's advice.
Correct. The other thing it says is that we have to be aware of the views of Iwi, so we can't sit passively. But it doesn't say that we have to abide by those views.
Well,
and
that's give them veto rights.
That's right. That's where the tension comes in, because I suggested that they vetoed out the two cheapest option, which is 1A and 1G, and looked at the far more expensive ones, and that we as councillors need to be aware of the affordability of this, and whether we are prepared to pay tens of millions of dollars for Bluff on the assumption that we are catering for cultural value. And so that's been a bit of a hard ask, and I got a bit of flack for that, naturally. The issue then comes down to 1G and 1F.
Yep.
So 1G means that to go to Mother Earth, which is what iwi want, it would run through a rock channel. And so that's just exactly that, a channel cut out with large rocks in it, and it runs across that, then eventually gets pumped out to sea. That's one option. That's 1G. That 1G is about a $7 million cost. 1F, which is what iwi is pushing for, but they didn't get the support of councillors at the committee meeting. It's divided, because we had some abstaining as well, is 1F. So 1F means you create a wetlands, and then you put the water into the wetlands, and eventually you pump it out.
Right.
The downside of the wetlands is twofold. One, it picks up silt, and it also picks up bird excrement as well, because of the nature of wetlands. And so that makes the water that we pump out into the strait actually worse, where the rocklands doesn't change anything at all. It doesn't improve. There's no environmental improvement. This is purely just a cultural issue. But that cost to 1F was about 16 or $17 million, maybe even more than that. And the operating costs for 1G are about 30 to 50,000 a year. For 1F, which is what iwi is pushing for, $210,000 a year. So that's just to maintain the wetlands.
On top of the other costs we have already.
So that doesn't include an additional set of pumps and having to pump it back out of the wetlands. So for me, that's become unaffordable. And when we take that precedent across to Clifton, that wetlands, if we had to create a wetlands, would be $50 million. And if we couldn't satisfy a rock gully, if they were opposed to that again, that we would then end up landing on discharge to land, which means nothing would go out into the river and eventually out to the ocean. That cost us $200 million plus.
Where we're going to find the land for that?
Who knows? Would it be Sandy Point? I don't know. But either way, that discharge to land comes at a huge cost. And $200 million on top of our rates. Well, put that in context. We currently borrow, our borrowing level is about $113 million. So we have to pay for that. It's a little bit like a mortgage. And we have some money in the bank. So our net debt is about $80 million. So if we put another 200 onto that, we're more than trebling the cost. And so you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out what that does to rates. And so I just can't sit with that. And so the dilemma that we will face at the next meeting is, do we continue down the path of the Resource Management Act, which is what we're currently in, which allows any party, including iwi, to appeal to the Environment Court, and that comes with a potential cost to the city between $200,000 and $500,000 to defend that, or do we allow ourselves to be in the fast track, which is the new legislation the government's bringing around that has no appeal rights, and it has a group of experts that will decide on it. And I understand that we are in Schedule 2 of that, which means it'll probably be 18 months, 2 years away. And in the interim, our current consent would roll over in Bluff, given that we've had no objections, given that all the monitoring that's been done in the last 25 years shows no problems. And I get feedback to say, oh, but we have Maori knowledge that you don't have. Well, that doesn't sit well with me. I mean, if we've been monitoring the discharge in Bluff and it's been okay, and they've been monitoring it with power, which is very sensitive to any sort of pollution. It picks it up and filters it really quick. And so we would trace it if there's a problem. And given that I can't find anything anywhere that says that locally we have raised this issue with the regulator, which is Environment Southland, then I just can't justify supporting 1F. So at the next meeting, it's going to be really difficult because there is an expectation from iwi that they have conceded or moved their preference away totally from land to a ocean option that goes via land, which is a concession on our behalf. My view is, on behalf of the ratepayers that I represent, we have already conceded that we will move away from 1A, which comes with very little cost because it's the status quo. So very tense time at the next meeting, which is the 29th. And we'll see whether there's any further movement from councillors. and whether there's any further movement from iwi to reconsider 1G, which comes at about a third of the cost of 1F.
Yeah. But we need to get the information out to people as well, so they understand it, because the ratepayers need to understand it, so they can then,
That's the other dilemma that we have. Do we have to publicly consult? My wish is that we do. We should tell the public and allow them to have a say. I'm quite convinced if I went out with 1A, even though the regulators and iwi tell me we would never get 1A anymore because you've got to consider other options that improve the discharge, being mindful that a rock channel doesn't improve anything.
That's right.
And a wetlands actually goes in the other direction.
So
if we're not improving under either of those two, why would we spend between 7, nearly 8, and $20 million when we get no environmental benefit?
Exactly.
Purely on an emotional
rather than actual common sense.
Yep, it is. And so I'm quite sure if I went out to the ratepayers and said, look, this is the cost, this is what's going to happen to your rates if we agree to that. Which one do you want? I'll get a landslide from people saying we want our rates to stay as low as you can possibly get them. And so to avoid that, iwi could agree to 1G, and we wouldn't need to consult because we've already got $7.7 million in the long-term plan for the upgrade at Bluff, which we've consulted on, and it could be that we get a non-notifiable consent, which means that it's much easier to get that than having to go out and publicly consult. So the ball will now sit between now and the 29th with iwi about what they're prepared to move to. If they don't, I think we're going to have a really tough old debate. You will have heard in the committee meeting, which was last week, Councillor Dermody and the Deputy Mayor both asked for a paper to tell us why iwi were taking the most expensive option. With the cultural stuff. Needed to understand that. Now, of course, staff can't write that, so it might very well be that at the meeting on the 29th, I will ask both iwi representatives to tell us why we are wearing this cost.
Deserve an explanation.
They do. I was expecting that 1F would have gone through at the committee level, being mindful it's only a recommendation to council, so it's not decision making. And I was pleasantly surprised the number of councillors said, whoa, let's have a slowdown on this. We don't understand why we're wearing these costs. And I think that was good governance.
That's the Bluff Wastewater update. Thanks, Nobby. Now, everyone, make sure you click the link and sign the petition to save Dunedin Hospital. Until next week, see you later.